Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another one of our amazing student interviews. I've got an incredible, dynamic powerhouse on the call today who's had some amazing results and just come back from a pretty incredible holiday as well, which we'll talk about as well. But Megan, for all the people at home who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you, your business, what sort of models you have, where are you located, and who is it that you're really passionate about serving?
Yeah. So hi. So I'm Megan. I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and our business model is more on serving. We have a small group training, so all of our classes are no more than 10 people in our classes.
Mhm.
And then we also have an 8-week boot camp that we do, and we run, and it runs every 8 weeks, and then there's 2 weeks off, and it cycles through that. And then we have private training as well. So we kind of have three branches of the business. Some of them overlap, and clients kind of do multiple programs at once, and then some they're just kind of a standalone. So each of our programs kind of cater towards a little bit different audience. So our small group and boot camp is a very similar group of people, where it's more of the 35 to 49-year-olds that are looking really to get back into a routine. They've fallen out of that. They're scared of the big box gym and the classes there. They're intimidating. Maybe they were previous athletes and they're just totally off the wayside. They've had children, kind of all over the board there. And then also men and women. So it's not just women-based, majority of women because it's group fitness, but we do have some men in there, about 25%. And then our private training is really where it's a little bit different audience that we're catering. So which is also kind of a struggle when it comes to getting the clients and getting them into the programs,
Right.
is those are really kind of the older clientele. So right now our private training clients range anywhere from that kind of 50 to 65-year-olds. Those have had the chronic pains. They've been pretty sedentary, maybe some knee replacements, hip replacements. So a little bit different audience and kind of the training methods that we're using for those.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've really got sort of two distinct avatars, or if you like, or ideal
Yeah.
clients that you
Yep.
then have different marketing that goes out to them. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's one thing that has been tough, and copy's not exactly my strong suit, but is getting those markets right, those avatars, really figuring them out and changing the messaging for who we're trying to bring into those programs. And it can't just
Right,
be an overall, this is who we serve, because it's not.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's great, and I know everyone's going to be on the edge of their seats now, wanting to hear more of the Megan Cooper story. So, where were you before you started with NPE, Megan? Fill us in. What were you doing then? What did the business look like, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, so we opened in October of 2014, and I had a business partner when we first opened. So we went a year through that, both keeping our full-time jobs and trying to run the studio, which I would not recommend doing at all, and just burning the candle at both ends. And that partnership only lasted about a year. And then we dissolved that, and I took over the entire business myself. So with that, it was really struggling and then not knowing what to do, what's next. I'm still working my full-time job, and now I've taken on all of the responsibilities of the studio, not
Mm,
just a few things that we had split. I thought we were doing okay. Looking back, we were not. I wasn't paying myself. I was working, almost 12 to 16-hour days, working at the studio, going to my day job, coming back to the studio, working on the weekends. I never had a day off. And then we were probably sitting that first year at maybe about 5,000 a month that we had in revenue income. And then once I finally quit my job, I went another year of that, of working both. And it just got to the point where I'm not seeing my family. My husband and I aren't spending time together. Luckily, we don't have children, and so we didn't have that added into it. But I just got to a point where a decision has to be made. I either totally pull the plug and stop the studio, or I've got to go all in at the studio. And so my husband supported me, went all in at the studio. And then at that point, I was like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do now. Now this is my full-time job. It took me about 3 months or so to kind of get going, because I was used to having at work, you're used to it. I was at my previous employer for 11 years. I knew what I had to do every day. I knew my projects, whereas this, I just had no clue. And I did it for probably about a year before I first joined NPE at that point. And I still remember that conversation with my husband when I was talking about it. And he was really skeptical. Like, you can figure this out. You figured it out to this point. Like, why do you really need a coach to help you with this? Like, is this legit? And I think I had a couple calls with some of the salespeople, and I still was like, I think I've got to do this. I think I've got to do this. And he's finally like, if you think this is the right step, then go for it. So at that point, I did the accelerator program, and that really changed things and kind of got me into that next step of being able to focus and be able to move forward. And then after that, we had about a year where I was just on my own. We finished the accelerator program and there was nothing. And I was kind of stuck. I was stuck between about 8 to 12,000 a month and just wasn't going anywhere. Kind of sitting at about a 40, 45 member base on the group side of training.
Right.
Had a few personal training clients that I had, so I had a lot of time during the day, but I wasn't spending my time working on the right things then. And I just was like, I saw that there was an NPE mega conference, and this was October of 2017, I think. Is that right? The last one?
Yep.
Yeah. So my husband and I actually decided to make a road trip out of it, and we flew into Miami, rented a car, and we kind of drove up the coast and finished in Orlando for the conference. And then at that point, it started to get serious. Like, I need to do something. Like, talking to you guys, hearing everybody, meeting everybody that was there. It's like, I'm not going to continue to grow. I'm just going to be beating my head against the wall. If I keep doing what I'm doing, I've got to do something about it. And so sat down with you guys and made the commitment to the academy for a year. And at that point, we hit the ground running right away when I got back, and things really took off from there.
It's such an amazing story, and I loved what you shared at the start there, because there'll be a bunch of people listening to this call who are in the same place where you've got a business and you've got clients, but you don't know what you're doing every day, and you get to the end of the day and you've been busy shuffling stuff and doing this, but you haven't actually driven the business forward.
Right.
Which is where a lot of people get stuck. And I love how you reached out for that initial help, and that gave you some structure. But then you recognize, well, to really take it to where you want to go, you need to have consistent coaching and support, not just, a one-off program, which is good as a starting point, but isn't going to get you to what your overall goals were. So that's awesome. And I was smiling because I remember that mega training event where you and I met, and there was still the same sort of little bit of nerves and a little bit of fear as well about, is this really the right move? But you were you had, very brave, and you had a lot of courage there, and you jumped right in, and we knew you could do it, that's for sure, because absolutely, you were dedicated to the task, and amazing to have that support from your husband as well, even though, it was, because, not all things do pan out, do they? And not all things are particularly real. So it's great that support from him too. So we've talked about where you were, and obviously going from sort of 5K and then getting to that, 10 to 12, and then really investing in long-term success with us and the Academy program. Where are you at now? What does the business look like now? How many people work in it? How many clients do you have? What's the revenue? What sort of lifestyle do you have? Tell us more about that, Megan.
Yeah, so our best month ever was just over 26K. So we've changed quite a bit. I have converted all of my independent contractors over into employees. So I have 7 employees, some of which are personal trainers and some of which teach classes, and some that do both. We have grown, more than doubled our personal training side of the business, and our group members are at 100 now, which is huge. And then our private training is probably at about 18, I think, as of today. So, and there's 2 of us that are managing the private training clients. I've been able to step back out of that, and I'm not taking any more private training clients, so I can block my time to reserve it to work on the business, which is really what's helped kind of take it to that next level. And then, so I have the other personal trainer, and he's almost at the place where he's full to where I'm going to have to bring on another private personal trainer that also will be teaching some classes. And it's been fun. I've been able to no longer spend all my time teaching classes, doing private training, working on the programming for the clients, and just those day-to-day answering emails, all the things that just busy work and take up time, to now I can actually focus on what are my goals? what do I want to do this quarter? What about this month? And focus on what do I need to do to increase my revenue to where I need it to go. And so that's been a lot of fun from doing that. And also I've been able to take vacations. So last year I took 1 2-week vacation, and then probably about 3.5 weeks total of vacation. And I just got back from a trip from Bali when we went there for 10 days. And not only was the business still able to survive, but they were able to close some sales while I was gone as well. So to see it still grow is pretty amazing.
And that is amazing. I mean, let's just pause there for a second. You flew from Minneapolis, where it's
Yeah.
minus 300,
Yep, it is
to
right
Bali,
now.
here in Indonesia, and where it's 85, 90 every single day of the year, and you've had 10 days off where you've explored the island, you've had a bunch of fun, you've relaxed, but your team have continued to grow numbers whilst you're away. That's significant, Megan. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's been one of the things this year. I mean, until last year was all about growth and getting systems and everything in place. And now this year is about developing me and developing my staff. And that's what's allowing me to step away from being in the daily operations to be able to focus on more of the higher level stuff.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because you mentioned earlier you had a lot of contractors, and that's often what we all do at the start, right? Because it seems easiest, and we're not too sure that we want to make the commitment. Do we want to pay taxes? Do we want to pay their maybe even their super or whatever it might be? And that can be daunting. But you made that switch, and what happened then? What was the change? I mean, obviously you've worked on yourself in terms of your leadership as well, and you're continuing to do that, as you mentioned. But what was the shift there from what happened to the business when you moved from a subcontract model to an employee model, and how did you then manage them effectively?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because that was kind of one thing that when I was working with Mark, who was my coach at the time, he's like, I needed to get to a place, because they're all independent contractors. So they're coming in, teaching their class and leaving. I couldn't kind of ask them or require them to do above and beyond their classes with the way that they were being paid and the work that they were doing. So it was really hard to have any consistency and have our group classes, depending upon who was teaching, it was completely different. And we just couldn't have that structure. And in order for me to take that next step as a business and to have the consistency, whereas a client comes in, they're going to have that same experience no matter who's teaching, it was that I had to go to a place where I can now have them be employees. I can not necessarily tell them what to do, but give them that structure of, this is what Studio Me is, this is our vision, this is how we're going to move forward, this is how we serve our clients, and here are your job responsibilities. So that, I mean, it was difficult to then go to managing people, but management experience in my previous job. So I was able to dive into that and knew what I had to do to continue to bring them together, make that transition for them, because now they have meetings and other things they're required to do. And I think the hardest thing was for them is their pay actually went down a little bit because we bumped them to employees and I was now paying their taxes. So, but for them, other than that, and having a better understanding of where we were going as a company and being more involved in decisions, there wasn't a huge change on their end. It was more for the growth of the business.
Gotcha. So, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because sometimes we think, oh, well, they'll hate that because they don't want to be employees. But when you can take, because no one wants to do their taxes, right? So when you take that headache away from them, they're like, oh, this is great, thanks. And from a team perspective, I mean, how has that changed the morale? Rather than having individuals all feathering their own nest, so to speak, you've now got a team which are all working towards growing and developing the business. How does that feel now?
Yeah, I mean, we see each other much more often, so it actually feels like a team. It feels like we all work together to collaborate to help move the business forward. It's not just, I'm in here, I'm teaching my classes, I don't care what that person does, or, that's my client, I know them really well. So now it's just more congruent. We're all on the same page, we're all working towards the same mission and have the same goals and can help serve the clients better.
Yeah, I love it. It's significant. You mentioned something there as well, where you now don't work as much in the business, you're working on the business, and you've created space to be able to do that. And part of that is developing yourself continually as well, which has been a big thing. What do you think is some of the biggest benefits or what's contributed to your growth as a leader and as a business owner?
I think a lot of it has just been some education about just continuing to learn how to manage people and run the business. So reading books is a big thing for me, and just learning from that. Networking with other business owners, I freed up some time to do that. Still not as much as I would like. That's on my goal list here, is to get a little more involved and kind of make some of those connections. But it's, yeah.
Well, it's been awesome. I mean, I know that, you know, you're a regular contributor to our community, both at events, but also through our exclusive Facebook pages and those sorts of things. And not only have you asked and received and got a lot of support there, but you give a lot of support too. What's it been like to be sort of involved with that NPE online community as well as the offline events, but more the online side? Has that been beneficial? Has that helped you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just being in a group where they're experiencing very similar issues or growing pains as that you're going through it's huge. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are entrepreneurs and business owners, and they don't have that. So they're just kind of winging it. They don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of. And especially being the sole owner, is I don't have anybody else. And so this group serves as that. And someone that's gone through something similar can share their advice, and then I can take that, bring that in, internalize it, and then figure out how it's going to work towards my business, and then bring it in from there. So it's priceless.
Gotcha. So you're not the only sort of maniac who's questioning their sanity from time to time. You're in a community.
Yeah, I'm not alone.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you do give a lot of support. It's fantastic in that community too. You've obviously had some fairly significant changes since 2014. I mean, one, going from 5K a month to 26K is a fun change, but you don't have a business partner anymore, as you mentioned. It is you sort of holding the reins to everything. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've gone through in that growth and development of your business, Megan?
Yeah, so I think, right out of the gate, right after we dissolved the partnership with my previous partner, was the price increase, raising the rates. So that was a huge piece of it. And I still remember that and how hard it was to pull the plug to write to everybody, because we were doubling our prices. And I thought for sure everyone's going to leave. They don't see the value in what we do. Like, yeah, they enjoy themselves, but what if they don't stay? Now, how am I going to rebuild this? So that was definitely a big challenge, making sure we're getting paid what we're worth to be able to pay the bills and keep going. So that was one. Working both jobs and getting through that. I still don't know how I did, in all honesty. Looking back, it was just a big blur. And there's been other challenges too, with having staff and figuring out all of that, payroll, workman's comp, everything that kind of comes with that. And it's, with having the staff and continuing to grow, expenses start to grow. So trying to keep that down while still trying to increase our profits. And it's really easy to let that creep up at the same time, and just balancing all of that, knowing that there is going to be sometimes where expenses are going to get higher, but we have to get there in order to be able to grow further. So just to know that that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, our CEO, Sean Greeley, says this all the time, doesn't he? It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep. That's the key, and whether you keep that to reinvest, which is what you've been doing with your staff and with yourself as well, but it's being able to make sure that you're not just increasing everything and putting more pressure on yourself, which is what you've done really well. You mentioned raising the rates there. Was that when you went through the sort of margin calculators and realised that within that early program with NPE, and then realised, hang on, we're not going to be able to work. So you doubled your prices, and you use the raising rates tools, which the folks on the call won't know, but it's a way of communicating with your clients. But it's pretty terrifying doing that as well. Did you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was like, there's no way we can go that high. There's no way. They're not going to pay this for that. We can't raise it up over $100 a month. There's just, no, this isn't possible. What is possible? And yeah, it was probably the most stressful part of going through the accelerator program, was that piece for me.
Yeah, I love it. It's That's terrifying, isn't it?
Mhm.
And, I know I've spoken to some of our clients who had everything ready. They're all ready to send it. And then they just got cold feet, left it for a day or two until they got the courage back up to do it
Mhm.
again. But I guess
Yeah.
the difference with that is you could clearly see that your current numbers in terms of what you're charging, there was just no ability to run a
Yeah.
successful business with that, right? So that knowledge and knowing that it's the numbers. It's not because there's a lot of emotions attached to that too, right? We feel like, oh, are they going to feel bad because, our clients,
Yeah.
that is, because we're asking for more money, and do they feel like I'm greedy or whatever else? But when you can take the emotion out of it and just see the numbers and recognize, hey, we're going to go under. We can't survive unless we
Yeah.
have the right margins. So did that help?
Yeah, that tool, I mean, I wouldn't be in business right now if I didn't go through that process. There's no way. I mean, we weren't, yeah, I can't even imagine what would have happened. We would have needed quadruple the members, which we don't even have the space for. So,
Right. Yeah, it's well done on doing that, because that's definitely having courage and practicing faith. That's for sure. So you just talked about some of those challenges, obviously growing and developing. What what sort of lessons? What have been the big takeaways for you, Megan, in terms of now becoming a very successful business owner and an owner of a business which can generate its own revenue, whether you're there or not? What have your biggest lessons been?
I mean, it's interesting that you say business owner, because I think that that's one of the light bulbs that went off this past year is I'm not just a personal trainer, a group fitness instructor, is that I am a business owner, and I have to get into that mindset, and I can't continue to stay in that, oh, I'm just a trainer. So it was kind of a transition from identity to, is who am I if I'm not teaching classes anymore? Like, that's why I opened this business. Then what am I? So that, and then, some of the other words of advice is, just really continuing to love what I do and finding that passion in what I do. And if there's something that's just not right, is kind of going back and asking myself, why did I start this in the first place? And
Mm,
what is my vision? And this year actually was a kind of a around the holidays towards year end. It was a time that Katrina is my coach right now, and I had to sit down and really figure out, where do I want this business to go? I was kind of at a crossroads. And do I open a second location? Do I stay where I am? Do I relocate to a new space so we can grow and get a little bigger, because we're running at a little capacity right now? So I had to really ask myself and think about the lifestyle I wanted, because when I first opened, it was completely different. Like, I had this idea that I was going to have multiple locations. Studio Me was going to be known everywhere. And now, just thinking about where I am now, I don't want to go back through those first few years that were just terrible. And that's what it would be again if we opened a second location. It'd be thinking in a little place, but it would still be taking away from the free time that I've given myself to date. And
right.
so kind of sitting down and really figuring out, what do I want for my lifestyle? What do I want for the business? And why did I start this? What do I want to do? I still want to teach some classes. I don't ever want to get out of that, at least as of now. But I think that's a big thing, is kind of going back and doing a gut check, like
Mm,
what it
mm.
is, and having that strong team around you to be able to take time off and go on vacation and develop those staff and have that client experience that's going to be similar no matter what class they come to. They come in, they're going to have that same feel if it's me teaching or if it's somebody else.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you covered a lot of ground with that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting, isn't that shift when you realize and that self belief in that I am a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
This is because sometimes we can feel like we're just acting in that role. We're not really a
Yeah.
business owner. But to get
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a hobby when you start, right? It's like,
right,
oh, I really
right.
like this. I was teaching classes somewhere else, did some boot camps, and now let's just open a business.
Now, you touched on something with team there as well, and because I know a lot of people really struggle with this, and often it's a bit of a blocker to get to where you are, because they're good trainers, so they get clients, they maybe know a little bit about marketing, they start to bring on some staff, but the staffing situation just doesn't work. You've been very successful in terms of converting your subcontractors into employees, which has been amazing. Um, where do you think the biggest breakdown is for people from a staffing perspective? Because we can't be their friend, right? Which is a
Right,
fun for
right.
most of us. Yes, we're their
Yeah.
leader, Yes, we're their boss, if you want to call them that. We can be friendly, but it's about empowering them. It's about challenging them at some times as well. How have you found that situation in terms of working with the team?
Yeah, so it's, I mean, you have to make sure you have the right people. And I think that's the hardest thing to find, and finding the quality instructors and those that have the experience level that I need. And it's more so the skill set. So are they relatable to people? Do people like them? Can they coach? Because I can teach them how to do kettlebells and things like that. Like, that's all stuff that they can learn, but it's more of the other, what's in their toolbox, what are they bringing to me? And I think that's a big thing when you're looking at your staff, is you need to have the right people to be able to move forward. Other things that, as far as staffing goes, is you've got to find a way to a common ground and to get them all together, especially if they're in a model where they're teaching just classes here and there and they don't see each other very often. You've got to be able to find a way to bring them in, whether you're doing staff events, if you're, your team meetings, having them frequently, because it's really easy to just let that slide. Like, oh, okay, I talked to them, I saw them that day, but the rest of them still aren't coming together. And just making sure that you're sharing and providing visibility to what you're doing, what you're spending time on, because they don't know either. I mean, a lot of it is they think that you only teach a couple classes and I rarely see you in the evening at the studio. So what else are you doing? So being able to share goals, where we need to go, and, maybe even tying some bonus structures to that too, to help them, help you achieve those goals that you want to hit.
Yeah, that's some great takeaways there, that's for sure. And you talked about this just a moment ago, about doing a gut check, as you said, and making sure that the business vision and your personal vision are actually aligned and are going in the same direction. And I guess that's the same, as you mentioned, being transparent with the team to let them know what is that vision, and what are you looking to create for the business, but also what are you looking to create for your life, and to have that conversation with them. What do they want to create for their lives?
Absolutely. Yep. And a lot of it too for them, it's empowering them, training them, giving them opportunities to learn and to grow, because you can't do everything yourself. So I think that's been one of the struggles, is being able to let go and knowing that they're not going to do things the way that I do things, but it's still going to be good. It's going to be quality work, even though I might do it a little differently. So stepping back and away from some of those tasks that I would normally be doing, and maybe my email would be worded differently, or I would talk to a client a little differently. They're still doing a great job. And it's also then finding what motivates them to continue to have them doing that good job and excelling in their role.
Right. So really understanding them and what they want to achieve, and the ways. I love what you just said then about empowering them so that they can perform in the role, but also see the value of working with you, because it's not just a paycheck, is it? It's about them developing and continuing to, to develop themselves and be that best version of themselves. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, it is amazing what you've done, and you've had a roller coaster time. I know the challenges don't stop in any, they're still there, as you said. Now the challenge is, do I open another one? Do I max this one out? What is that next challenge? But I imagine it's a heck of a lot more fun, and it is a challenge at $26K per month than the massive stress and worry and, life-defining obstacles that it was at $5,000 a month, which is great.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because at the time I didn't really know what I didn't know, especially in that first year when it was just still like, we just kind of went into it, like, we're going to do it. Everything kind of fell into place, and looking back, it's like, oh my gosh, if I would have known what I know now, or had the support from NPE when I opened, we probably would have been in a completely different place than we are now. But you can't. Hindsight is 2020, right?
Right. And you are here now, which is amazing. And you did invest in yourself and your development, and it's really hats off to you. So what would be for those listening at home who are now inspired and thinking, wow, maybe either I can do this, or maybe I can turn this ship around, if they're already in business, what would be your number one piece of advice for the folks listening be, Megan?
Number one, I would say get a coach, a mentor, somebody who can help guide you through the process, that has an understanding of how to run a business, that has tools, whether it's NPE, whether it's someone else, business coach somewhere, that just having that accountability partner makes all the difference. Because not only are you accountable to yourself, but you're accountable to somebody else.
Got it. I guess that's especially important when being the sole owner as you are. It's almost like having a partner in the business, isn't it, who's not emotionally involved. So, the feedback can be great. Well, that's awesome. Look, I know there'll be a bunch of people going back to the start now and listening to this over again, because it is an amazing story. Congratulations on what you've achieved. It's been incredible, and I can't wait to see what the next 6 to 12 months are going to be for you, and what further holidays and adventures you two are going to have, you and your husband, as that business continues to grow. So thanks so much for your time today, Megan. We really appreciate it, and you are going to inspire a lot of people.
Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
Well done. We'll speak to you soon.
All right.